In a sport ruled by giants, one man stood out, not for his size, but for his power. At just 277 pounds, he became one of the most feared Yokozuna in history. We present in sumo spirit the story of the wolf, Chiyonofuji. Sumo, Japan's ancient clash of giants. For centuries, the dohyo belonged to men of sheer size, warriors whose mass alone could decide a bout. In the 70s and 80s, the top division was an era of titans. 350 pounds on average. Over 6 feet tall. Here, bulk wasn't just an advantage, it was the law. Power wasn't a choice, it was destiny. Then, a figure emerged from the crowd of titans. Chiyonofuji Mitsugu, a man who would defy the very blueprint of sumo. His true name was Mitsugu Akimoto, and his frame was athletic, yet astonishingly small by sumo's towering standards. 5 feet 1 inch tall, at his peak, 277 pounds, a feather among boulders. Could such a man survive among giants? His body told a different story, defined, muscular, almost sculpted from stone, less the form of a traditional rikishi, and more the frame of a champion carved for speed and precision. It was 1970. He was just 15 when he entered the Kokonoi stable, under the watchful eye of former Yokozuna Chiyonofuji. Merely a slender youth then, but with an iron will that refused to bend. He did not fit the mold of the rikishi, yet soon, the mold itself would break. Harubasho, 1975. Chiyonofuji steps into the Makuuchi division for the first time. His debut record? 8 victories, 4 defeats, enough to secure his place among the elite. A promising start, but fate can be cruel. The next tournament, Natsu 1975. His record slips to 7-8, a losing mark. The consequence? Demotion to Juryo. His rivals, men like Yokozuna Kitanumi, a staggering 370 pounds, and Wajima, close to 330, dwarfed him. They crushed with sheer mass, overpowering with brute force. January 1976 brought his return to Makuuchi with a solid 96. But the years from 1976 to 1978 would be a battlefield of inconsistency. Then came the change. Around 1978, under the guidance of his mentor and driven by the sting of injuries, Chiyonofuji reshaped his destiny. Gone was the reliance on brute strength, the very ground where the heavyweights reigned supreme. In its place, a new arsenal: speed, surgical precision, and explosive grips. He honed the Migiyotsu, right hand inside grip, and paired it with techniques like uwatenage, katasukashi, and suridashi. With them, he could twist momentum into a weapon, turning an opponent's charge into their downfall. While others pushed, Chiyonofuji pulled. When others leaned, he struck. January 1981, a historic clash. Yokozuna Kitanumi versus Sekiwake Chiyonofuji. Both stood at 14, one plogi. Everything came down to the playoffs. With a brilliant uwate dashinage, Chiyonofuji took his first yusho. The wolf had arrived and was instantly promoted to ozeki, the beginning of a legend. July 1981. The wolf was unstoppable. As an ozeki, Chiyonofuji had already proven himself in back-to-back tournaments, and once again he brought down his great rival, Yokozuna Kitanumi, to seize his second championship, by 4. That victory changed everything. Chiyonofuji was promoted to the sport's highest honor, Yokozuna Aisen, the 58th in the long history of sumo. From that moment, he wasn't just another champion, he was the face of an era. Out of his 31 career titles, a staggering 25 would come from this rank alone. Through the 80s, no one ruled the dohyo like him. Chiyonofuji had ascended, and the age of the wolf had begun. Next yusho? The most epic. On day 15, he fought against Kotokaze in Kyushu, 1981. One misstep, that's all Kotokaze gave him. Chiyonofuji dropped his weight like a falling boulder, crushing down and ending the match with a bise taoshi. His record stood at 12-3. 2 warriors, one last match, both at 12-3. The Emperor's Cup waited for no one. In the playoff, Chiyonofuji drove Komusubi Asashio out with a crushing Yori Taoshi. It was his 3rd championship, proof that the wolf's hunger was far from satisfied. Chiyonofuji himself would later reflect on this moment. That victory, he said, was the foundation on which he built everything that followed. It gave him the belief, the confidence, and the drive that carried him to the throne of Yokozuna. Natsu 1982, a rematch of rivals, Chiyonofuji and Asashio, both locked at 13-2 C. Another tournament, another playoff. This time the Wolf struck with speed. A sharp hatakikomi sent Asashio crashing to the clay. It was Chiyonofuji's 5th Emperor's Cup, IBDN, and another step in cementing his legacy as the era's unstoppable Yokozuna. The years after, they were tougher. New rivals emerged, and none more dangerous than fellow Yokozuna Takanosato, Eza. For 2 long years, he stood as Chiyonofuji's greatest obstacle. Kyushu 1983. The final day. Both men locked at 13-1. Takanosato. Towering, powerful. Chiyonofuji. Lighter, relentless. The Wolf pressed forward, step by step, forcing his rival to the Tawara. With unyielding strength, he finished it with a decisive Yorikiri. The result? His 9th Emperor's Cup, proof that even in the hardest years, the Wolf would not surrender his reign. But fortune would turn. In January 1985, Yokozuna Kitanumi, the old rival, finally retired. Just a year later, the aging Takanosato followed. With the giants of the past gone, the path was clear. The dohyo was wide open, and Chiyonofuji, he was ready. From here, the Wolf's true era of dominance began. 1985 marked a turning point. With Kitanumi retired and Takanosato fading, the dohyo finally cleared for Chiyonofuji, and in 1986, the Wolf unleashed his full dominance. He won 5 of 6 tournaments, a feat unseen since Kitanumi in 1978. Older, lighter, but sharper than anyone, Chiyonofuji ruled the decade on pure skill and spirit. The highlight came at the Nagoya Basho. 2 Yokozuna, 1 final day. The arena thundered as Chiyonofuji collided with Kitao. In a surge of strength, he drove him out with a crushing Yorikiri. The crowd erupted. It was his 17th Emperor's Cup, another stone set in the monument of his legend. Kyushu 1986. The dohyo trembled. 2 Yokozuna, Chiyonofuji and Futahaguro entered the final day with identical 12-2 records. The Emperor's Cup would belong to whoever claimed this last battle. The Wolf wasted no time. He struck first, locked his grip, and never let go. With relentless force, he drove Futahaguro over the straw bales in a crushing Yorikiri. This was Yusho number 19, another mark of Chiyonofuji's unstoppable reign. 1988. The year the Wolf carved his name into history. A streak began, and with it, a march into legend. 53 consecutive victories, the longest ever after Futabayama's 69 and Hakuho's 63. It started quietly on day 7 of May against Hananumi. Then it rolled on, 3 full tournaments and 8 more wins in November. Every reign meets its test. For Chiyonofuji, it came on the final day of Kyushu 1988. Onokuni met him in battle and, with a Yori Taoshi, ended the Wolf's unmatched momentum. The loss broke a streak of 53 consecutive victories. However, Onokuni had already been defeated in Nagoya 1988. Chiyonofuji stormed through the tournament, standing flawlessly at 14-0 on the final day. His last opponent, fellow Yokozuna Onokuni. The Wolf did not hesitate. With sheer, unshakable strength, he drove Onokuni out by Yorikiri. The result? An undefeated 15-0 record and his 24th Yusho in Makuuchi. A perfect tournament. His final Yusho? November 1990, with a crushing 14-1 record. Consistency was his other weapon. 31 Yusho between 1979 and 1990, the 3rd highest in history, just behind Taiho's 32 and Hakuho's 45. His career numbers tell the tale. 1,045 victories, 437 defeats, and 170 absences over 125 tournaments. Plus, for nearly 2 decades, from his Makuuchi debut in 1975 to his last bout in 1990, Chiyonofuji maintained a body of iron and a mind of steel. Unlike traditional Rikishi who chased mass above all else, Chiyonofuji forged a different path. His training focused on functional strength, endurance, and explosive power. The routine? Weightlifting, grip drills, relentless leg training to sharpen his takiai. Why? To strike like lightning from the first step. This was the foundation that let him unleash uwatenage and tsuridashi with devastating effect, lifting or throwing opponents up to 100 pounds heavier. Chiyonofuji was more than a fighter, he was a tactician. Every tournament began long before the first match. He studied his opponents, dissecting their styles. A heavy Rikishi who overcommitted on the push, a slower rival who couldn't shift their stance, weaknesses waiting to be exploited. His versatility was unmatched. evidenced by 41 different kimarite in his arsenal. From 1981 to 1990, this strategic mind kept his win rate against heavier rivals at an astonishing 75–80%. The mind guided the body, the plan broke the wall. Among Chiyonofuji's weapons, Yorikiri, the force out, was his trademark. But right behind it came Uwateneja Grozen, the overarm throw, his second most common winning technique. And he was also famous for the spectacular Tsuri Dashi, lifting opponents clean off the clay and carrying them out of the ring. The Wolf didn't just win, he made it look effortless. He carried more than skill into the dohyo, he carried an aura. The crowd knew him as Okami, the Wolf, for the piercing gaze and feral intensity he brought to every bout. This wasn't mere showmanship. His sculpted physique, his dynamic style, his ability to command attention, all combined to make him an icon. Arenas filled, eyes locked on him. The Wolf had arrived, and the pack followed. May 1991. The end had come. Chiyonofuji defeated Itai on day 2, but it would be his last victory. On day 3, he fell to Takatoriki. And then, at nearly 36 years old, the Wolf made the decision himself. He announced his retirement from sumo. It was the close of a glorious career, and a day that marked history in the dohyo. After retiring in 1991, he took command of the Kokonoe stable, guiding talents like Chiyo Taikai, ex-Komusubi Chiyo Tenzan, and ex-Maegashira Chiyo Hakuho. In 2008, Etsi Chiyonofuji joined the board of the Japan Sumo Association, in charge of regional tours, the Jongyo. But in 2011, scandal struck. One of his wrestlers, Chiyo Hakuho, admitted to match fixing. The Wolf took responsibility and resigned. Yet his story didn't end there. On May 31, 2015, Chiyonofuji turned 60 and performed the ceremonial Kanreki Dohyo Iri at the Ryogoku Kokugikan, a rare honor granted to only a handful of former Yokozuna. At his side stood 2 active grand champions, Hakuho as Tachimochi and Harumafuji as Tsuyuharai Tachimochi. It was a powerful reminder. Even decades after his retirement, the Wolf still commanded the dohyo, but fate was unkind. Just a year after his 60th birthday ceremony, Chiyonofuji fell ill. On July 31, 2016, in Tokyo, the Wolf passed away at the age of 61, CU. Japan mourned not only the loss of a champion, but of a legend who had defined an entire era of sumo. Chiyonofuji's triumph, achieved with a lighter frame, tore open the gates for Rikishi, who dared to stand among giants without matching their mass. In a sport ruled by bulk, he proved a different path. His mastery of technique and agility lit the way for wrestlers like Mainomi. And Takanohana, adopting a style built on grips and throws, his uwatenage echoing Chiyonofuji's influence, would go on to claim 22 yusho and ascend to Yokozuna in 1994. This was no small shift. His revolution reshaped sumo's training itself, pushing wrestlers toward greater technical versatility. The 90s saw it clearly. The Makuuchi division embracing a broader arsenal of kimarite, proof of the Wolf's shadow stretching far beyond his own era. Yet his mark was not confined to the dohyo. Chiyonofuji became a cultural symbol in Japan, drawing crowds in a time when sumo fought for attention against baseball. Chiyonofuji proved that in sumo, it's not the size of the wrestler, it's the size of his will. And the Wolf's will was unmatched. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Sumo Spirit channel for more content. See you in the next video.